Morning, everybody. Thank you so much for making it to today's workshop slash webinar. I'm Joy Owango, the Executive Director of the Training Center in Communication. This is a series of workshops that we've been hosting since 2024 on research integrity. And this time we are truly honored to work with the Somalia higher education community in hosting this particular workshop. What makes this particular workshop very interesting is that we were able to get stakeholders beyond Somalia. So we have speakers from Lebanon, we have speakers from the United Kingdom, and we've got speakers also from Zambia. And we are going to be sharing what it takes to have to include research integrity, especially in the scholarly communication ecosystem. Somalia has led the way. Somaliland has led the way in Somalia in the creation of a national repository. So that means data is being shared. So what does that mean for the academic community? The Library Association has also led the way in making sure that the, the, the academic community has equitable access to resources. What does that mean for the academic community? What are some of the implications? What are some of the challenges and the opportunities? And this is what we are going to be talking about. So, as I'd said, this has been a conversation that we've had with, in particular, in Somalia since 2024. So it is truly exciting that we've reached this level, and it is the beginning of a series of activities we'll be conducting with the higher stakeholders, the higher education stakeholders in Somalia, in helping them or aiding them in adopting open science principles, of which research integrity is one of those aspects. Before we get right into the webinar, there are a few housekeeping rules. Number one, please, if you have any question, kindly just put them in the chat. We will strive to answer your questions as the workshop and the webinar is taking place. And also, keep your videos off unless you're a speaker. And also, please mute your audio as well. This is for the sake of those who will be speaking. This is the courtesy we need to afford to those who will be speaking. This webinar will take 1.5 hours maximum, and we'll strive to make it as interactive as possible. So I will begin by officially opening the webinar as to why we set this up and why this is important and why we felt that this webinar is important in conjunction with the activities that we've been hosting over the years. So for us, as TCC Africa, we are looking at building a culture of responsible research through capacity development. So it's an honor to join you today for this important conversation on research integrity and open science in Somalia. As I'd mentioned, this particular workshop is part of a series of activities that we will be conducting with the higher education stakeholders in Somalia with the objective of the country adopting open science principles within their national ecosystem. So I would like to sincerely thank the Ministry of Culture and Higher Education in Somalia, the Somalia Research Education Network, the Somalia Library Association, and the National Library of Somalia, and all our partners, PLOS included, and all our partners for their valuable collaboration and contribution to this important discussion. When we talk about research integrity, we're talking about ensuring that research is ethical, transparent, responsible, and trustworthy. This goes beyond avoiding misconduct. It is about creating a research culture where researchers understand and practice responsible research throughout the research life cycle. Capacity building is central to this. Researchers need practical knowledge on research ethics, data management, responsible publishing, authorship, artificial intelligence, and open science. But capacity building should not only target researchers. Librarians, research managers, ICT teams, university leaders, and policymakers all have an important role to play. So open science provides practical mechanisms for making research more transparent, discoverable, reproducible, and accountable. This can include sharing data where appropriate, making publications openly accessible using persistent identifiers, documenting research processes, and ensuring that research outputs are properly preserved and discoverable. And when I began the workshop, I said some of the stakeholders within Somalia have actively been involved in this, especially Somaliland and the Somalia Library Association. However, open science does not mean that everything must be made openly available. We must consider privacy, ethics, national security, intellectual property, and the rights of communities and research participants. The goal is therefore not simply to make research open, but to make it responsibly open. And that is the purpose of today's workshop. When you're talking about research integrity, it's about connecting it to open science and making research responsibly open. So at TCC Africa, we believe that training or capacity building should lead to change. The question is not only how many people we train, but also what they are able to do differently afterwards. As we move forward, I encourage all of us to focus on building a culture of responsible research, one that is ethical, transparent, inclusive, locally relevant, and globally connected. Somalia's research community has an important role to play in shaping the country's and the region's knowledge future. By investing in people, policies, infrastructure, and responsible research practices, we can build a stronger and more trusted research ecosystem that has both national and international impact. Let us therefore work towards a research culture in Somalia that is ethical, responsible, open, and trusted. So thank you so much, colleagues. And without further ado, I'd like to immediately uh, introduce Dr. Mohamud Mohamed Siad. He is the president of the Somali Library Association, and he's also the Director General of the National Library of Somalia. And he's going to talk about the role of the libraries, at least the Library Association and the National Library, in promoting research integrity and open science. Over to you, Dr. Siad. Dr. Mohamud Siad, are you ready?
I cannot hear.
Oh, did you hear me right now? Okay, as Dr. Mohamud Siad is sorting out his the audio with his, what do you call it, with his computer, we can go immediately to the next speaker and then we'll get back to him. And in this case, we'll introduce Dr. Yahe Abubakar Ahmed. He's the founding director of the CIMAD AI Institute. And he will be talking about protecting research integrity in the age of artificial intelligence, opportunities, risks, and responsibility. Dr. Yake, are you available?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. And I would like to thank you to TCC and other partners for this organizing workshop on a research integrity in the age of artificial intelligence. Today, I will talk about the opportunities, the risks, and the most importantly, our responsibility when we use AI in research. Let me share my screen first.
We can see your screen, so please continue.
Can you see me in my screen?
Yes, so please continue.
Okay. So today I will cover the most very main important parties, which is why this issue matters now, and the second part is I would like to discuss the issue related to the opportunities and the risks. Also, I would like to discuss the global standards, and also finally, I would like to discuss what researchers, universities, and journalists can do, especially in the Somali context. So let me start first to why this matters now. AI has already entered in the research workflow. Researchers are using AI for literature searching, writing, translations, coding, and data analysis. So this is not something coming in the future. This is already happening today. So AI is a dual-use technology. It can help us work faster, but it can also create errors, bias, and fabricated information. When it comes to Somali context, there is also a special opportunity. AI can help us overcoming language and research capacity gap, but we need to build an integrity and responsibility that we can use into our AI adoption from the beginning. In this slide, I would like to highlight the opportunities. AI can help us review a large amount of data much faster even. It can also help the translation and give Somali researchers better access to global scholarships. It can also support the data cleaning, coding, analysis, and writing. So for researchers working with a limited resources like the Somali researchers, this tool can be very, very valuable, but there is an important principle which says AI should support our researcher, not replacing our thinking. Yeah, and I wanted to be clear in this presentation, actually. It is not against the AI. AI can be very powerful research ally, but every opportunity comes with risks. One major risk is hallucination, where AI gives us information that sounds correct, but it's actually false. So I will provide you some example in the next coming slides. We also have a question about the authorship. If AI writes a large part of the paper, the question is who is responsible for that content? So there is also a risk of a bias. Normally, what we know as a director of CIMAT AI Institute and as expert of AI, artificial intelligence, we know that AI is built in a very large amount of data where AI can learn from existing information, and that information may contain a bias since it searches from the internet, it takes the information from the information is that's already been trained to the model. Finally, AI may affect peer review because fabricated or incorrect information can sometimes pass to through a normal review process. Finally, in AI should be, we should check and verify the content of AI before we use as a researcher. Now let us look at some evidence. These numbers, why we need to take these issues seriously, actually. The first number shows that the increase in a fabricating reference in biomedical research. The second number, or the second study, found is that almost 20% of the AI-generated researches or researches or references they tested were actually completed, fabricated. And the third example shows that the fabricated citations can even appear in papers accepted at a major AI conference. So the question is not AI can give us an answer. The question is, can we verify that answer? If we verify that answer, we can use as a research, we can adapt in our research, but every time we need to check whether this information is verified and it is cited actually in a papers that exist. Okay, let me give you some simple example. And here we have one example which says, imagine AI tells us that Ahmed, at 2024 found that AI improved Somali language researchers by 67%. So this sound is actually very academic. We have an author in this sentence, we have year, and we have an statistics. But I would ask you one simple question. Does this appeal actually exist, or that this paper or a research actually exists? If you go to the Google or Scholar or any other databases like the Scopus, you cannot find this kind of a paper in their database. So this is a problem with AI has a hallucination. AI can give us information with a confidence even when the information is not correct or when the information is not true. What we need now here, we need to check the original AI source. We need to verify the authors. We need to verify the claims, the statistics, and the references. And we do not cite AI-generated reference without a verification. Here we have another example case flash. Here we have two examples from the real researchers and publishing environment. The first is neuro-IPS. For those who may not know, neuro-IPS is one of the leading international conference in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And they showed or they found that fabricated citation were found even among unaccepted papers. They accepted many papers. After 1 year, they found that the accepted papers has a fabricated citations. The second example is an academic textbook that has been published by the Spring Nature that was found to contain a hallucination citations that leads to the finally to retracted or for the retraction of the book. So what we can learn from this example is normally a peer review is very important, but even a peer review is not a perfect. We still need researchers and reviewers to verify an important information. In this slide, I would like to highlight the global standards and what a journalist or standards tells us. There is a strong agreement among major organizations about some basic principles. The first one is AI can be an author. No, AI cannot be an author because AI cannot take responsibility for the researcher. Second thing is a researcher should disclose a meaningful use of AI. We should be transparent about how we use an AI and how we can adapt this to this. The third one is the most important, which is human remains responsible. If AI helps us write literature, analysis our data, and even sometimes AI can interpret our result, the most important thing is AI can take a responsibility. That is the question. That is why the global standards cannot allow AI can be an author. Let me come to the responsibility of the AI. Research integrity normally, as our friend Choi has mentioned, is not only a responsibility of the researchers alone. It also shared a responsibility. A researchers must verify AI-assisted information, and they use disclosure their use or the purpose of AI. The second thing is the universities and research institutions need a clear policies and a training for the students and staff. As I take one example, CIMAT has already adapted and prepared AI policy that can be used in a research, that can be used in a teaching, and even in administrative staff. And we are so glad to have an approval from the University Senate this month. So every institution is in Somalia or even beyond the Somalia, they need to take the responsibility of AI, and they have to develop a clear AI policy, and they have to train the students and staff. We have also a responsibility for journalists. The journalists, they need to have a clear role in this area. They need to have an appropriate disclosure requirements and the process to identify the fabricated information. Let us move to the responsibility in action. So what we can do in practice is, I can suggest 5 simple principles normally when we are discussing with the AI responsibility. Before I go to the slide, I would like to clearly mention that the responsible AI has a concern with a different organizations. They are saying, what does mean for responsible AI? Every organization or every AI expertise, they have different aspects. They have looked into the different aspects in this area. But the main important thing is we need to use AI when it adds a legitimate value. The second thing is we need to verify whether the claims, information, references, or the calculations and the analysis and the output should be verified. The third thing is if AI has a meaningful contributed to the work, we need to be transparent about it. We have to use a disclosure. The fourth thing is we need to protect our information, and we don't need to upload a confidential and sensitive information or very sensitive information to the public AI. So the fifth thing is we need to take a responsibility. At the end of the process or at the end of the research, the researchers should still take the responsibility of their work. Lastly, I would like to highlight the practical guidelines for the Somali researchers. Firstly, what does this mean for us in Somalia? Firstly, always verify AI-generated reference against the original source. Secondly, we have to follow the disclosure agreement of the journalists or institutions. Third, our universities need a clear AI use policies. CIMAT, as I mentioned before, CIMAT has already adopted one. Fourth, we need to train a student and researchers to recognize the hallucination and the bias. And finally, we should treat AI as a researcher support tool, not as an authority. And I believe Somalia researchers has a real opportunities when it comes to the AI. So we should not simply copy AI policies from the other countries even. We should develop responsible AI research in the context of Somalia that is responding to our own language, that responded to our own culture, and that can be applicable to our researchers and our data protection and even our institutional context. Thank you for your listening. And again, I would like to thank you again for TC Africa, Joy, and our partners for organizing this important workshop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yage. And thanks for bringing out the elements of AI and research integrity. We're talking about uh, not only responsible use of AI or ethical use of AI, but also proper representation in order to avoid hallucinated responses and how to effectively use it to effectively use it, at the same time making sure that we have proper representation in the entire process. We cannot deny that AI is becoming the norm within our ecosystems, and even some of the subsequent speakers will be talking about aspects of that in connection to research integrity and also how this supports the research life cycle. So our next speaker is Dr. Engineer Ahmed Dahir Siad. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Somaliland, Somalia. And he's going to be talking about the digital infrastructure for research integrity, connecting repositories and open research systems. For context, everybody, Somalia was, I can comfortably say this from an East African perspective, was the first country to have a national repository that institutions in the country could feed into and also share data. And on top of that, Engineer Ahmed could correct me if I'm wrong, was the first, other than having the national repository, it was the first repository that had persistent identifiers to make sure that DOIs, other than handles, to make sure that the work was within the repository was findable and accessible. And beyond that, what I've also loved about what Somaliland has been doing is that it has been working cross countries in promoting connectivity within the higher education ecosystem. It has become a backbone in supporting the higher education system within Somalia, and it's such an honor to have Engineer Ahmed taking us through this topic, especially taking us through what Somaliland is doing in the context of this workshop. So, Engineer Ahmed, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Joy and TCC. Very strong introduction. I really appreciate it. And I see a lot of familiar faces. So I say hi, everybody. So I haven't prepared that much presentation, but I would like just to give our perspective is on the topic, which I see is a very important especially at this time where there's a lot of change and a lot of collaboration is really required. When it comes to the digital infrastructure, it matters for higher education and research institutions, and I think we need to balance the foundations, making ready, as well as also just not waiting, and we have to catch the trend that is going. Dr. Yahya gave a great presentation on AI and how research institutions and universities actually could take advantage of it. So when it comes to digital infrastructure, it matters a lot for universities and research performing entities. Reliable connectivity will allow universities and scholars and researchers to give access to the scholarly accessible literature. So they should have that kind of, so connectivity is actually kind of foundation that they should have. And if the connectivity is weak, it will really encourage misconceptions, informal research practices, researchers not having actually good access to the research data. So it's very important to have. When it comes to the connectivity, I think it's the first pillar or it's the foundation that we should start. Campus networks must provide. It's not an optional where the priorities was given into other areas, but now they must provide reliable internet, which is adequate bandwidth in terms of the capacity and access. Cybersecurity is also very important as the universities and research institutions provide a very critical information. So this is where entrants actually come into play, helping the government is the universities to provide this kind of, to actually aggregate this demand. where it might be expensive or it might be not possible to have the technical skills. So to actually aggregate that demand so that campuses should provide reliable and adequate internet bandwidth. Just to give a picture in Somalia when it comes to the bandwidth and connectivity, we have done an e-readiness assessment just this year, 2026, in which we collected about 52 institutions on their readiness when it comes to the ICT, checking in number of areas, in number of domains. So specifically, when it comes to the bandwidth, we found that as of the data that we have collected in 2026, 1,000 students share a 40 Mbps, which is like 40 kp per user. And the guidelines for Africa, not to the rest of the world, specifically for Africa, is 1,000 students should share 200 Mbps. Not all African countries, even in East African countries, reach that height, but some of them are actually, such as Kenya, are getting there, or even Uganda going to reach there. But we are really falling behind, and we need to catch that. So when it comes to the connectivity and bandwidth access is really very important, and it's critical. These things we are talking about, this research and education infrastructure ecosystem. So we need to we're doing some intervention already in collaboration with the government to upgrade the capacity or the bandwidth of campuses. There's upgrade coming for that. And so that is where we need universities to actually have that good of campus networks, so that on top of it, we can build these educational services, whether it's to build a good repository that actually meets these FAIR principles and all, and or other services such as e.g. Room, Edu VPN, video collaboration systems, the AI Dr. Yahya was talking about. So this is very important, really. And also the access to the education, this will also help. So the other areas that is really very important, and I think it's about the topic, is the open science, and of course that will also come the repository infrastructure. We also did some study on that. The usage is really, I mean, in terms of institutional level, I'm talking about universities, campuses having their own repository, and so there are some institutions who have it, but it's very limited. So universities need to have these kind of repositories where research outputs can be preserved and can be deposited and available. And this will help in the future if the standard repositories are not used, if the website is being changed, or research will be lost on personal devices, or it's just in a library in a very conventional format. So repositories are very critical. We did some work on that to actually deploy a centralized repository to check at least that technical burden from universities and focus on their research and making these outputs. And for those who have their repositories, we can actually harvest and interconnect both. So repositories are also another really very infrastructure which is critical for education research institutions and open science as well. And not only repositories, but I think it's also very important to have these persistent identifiers such as DOIs or ORCID IDs. I think we have colleagues from DataCite and ORCID I can see in the call, which we'll talk, but this is very important. At least these kind of contents should be findable and citable, and the name similarities should be identified by their IDs and so. So these are very important. And I think, as Joy mentioned in their opening remarks, research should be open, but it's not without controls. It should be open, but not without controls. When it's necessary, it should be restricted as needed or as necessary. So open access is very important, and the underlying infrastructure that should actually keep these kind of things is very important. And more importantly, the collaboration is also very key, whether it's the regional or international. So those entities and institutions that are working there, and a specific community or country or should not really left behind. So there is so many rooms and areas for collaboration. And as I mentioned, when we're talking about this connectivity and digital infrastructure, of course, cybersecurity and data protection is also very critical and very important, and to have a clear use of policy and practices that are in place is really very important. So I will not take that much time, but I would like to just to conclude that research integrity cannot depend on just only individual goodwill only. It must be supported by systems that make this research responsible easier and visible, secure and verifiable as well. So this requires, of course, investing in connectivity, deploying trusted repositories, that of course meets the that uses standard formats or have the persistent identifiers that have good cybersecurity, even the campus infrastructure as well as these systems. And these systems should promote the open platform on open access with the necessary controls and policies in place. So I would like to stop here and back to you, Joy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Engineer Ahmed, and thanks for your insightful speech. And as I'd said earlier on, Somaliland is pretty much the backbone of the connectivity, the digital infrastructure within the higher education system in Somalia. And this has made it easy for uh, for open research to be adopted within the country, whether you're looking at sharing data or aiding in reproducibility or just making resources accessible and more equitable. So that is one ecosystem that we need to truly be grateful about, and it's good to know that they are really pushing and striving for research integrity practices within the higher education ecosystem, but also in line with scholarly communication and open science. So our next speaker is coming in from Dubai, and this is Mohamed Mustafa from DataSite. He's the community specialist from DataSite, and they've been working very closely with Somaliland, so it was not a surprise that we invited them for this workshop as well. And Mustafa is going to take us through his speech where he'll be focusing on enhancing research visibility and reproducibility through persistent identifiers and fair data. Mustafa, over to you.
Thank you so much, Joy, and thanks also to TCC Africa for hosting us today. Let me share my screen. So yeah, great. So today I'm going to talk about building trust in research infrastructure and also enhancing the visibility and discoverability of research outputs and how persistent identifiers and open metadata can help us to achieve these goals. This is a brief introduction about DataSite and who we are. So DataSite is a global community of research organizations. All of these research organizations are coming together because we share a common interest. We want to ensure that all research outputs and the resources are openly available, so it's published in an open format, but it's also connected. So we together can help in increasing reusability and also contribute to advancing knowledge. DataSite is also a non-profit organization registered since we started in Germany in 2009. So within the current community, this is a brief overview about the current global community that we support. We support over 1,800 organizations. We have a wide spectrum of organizations that also participate in the DataSite community. We have universities, we have national libraries, we have museums, we have data centers, we have governmental organizations. So a wide spectrum of organizations in terms of countries. So we have members across 70 countries, and data site members collectively registered over 130 million DOIs. And today I will be focusing briefly on persistent identifiers metadata and how the persistent identifiers metadata can enable trust in the research infrastructure and also support research visibility. So when we talk about bid metadata, we refer to the information that we collect when an organization is registering a persistent identifier. And that persistent identifier metadata is very useful when it includes rich information, descriptive information about that digital object. And it will help also in identifying and adding more context about that digital object. And one of the key areas that this bid metadata will help us is building trust in the research infrastructure, and I will explain how in the upcoming slides, and also improving the discoverability of these digital objects. This is a brief overview of the data site metadata schema and its structure. As you can see, we have 6 mandatory properties. You would need to provide data site with these properties in order to register a data site DOI. So we'll ask you about the creators or the contributors who created this work, the title of the work, the publisher, the organization name who published this output, the year, and what type of output you wish to register it with a data site DOI, so the resource type. On top of that, we have also 6 recommended metadata properties and 8 optional properties, such as language or specific dates that you want to include this information to be part of your DOI metadata record when you are registering that DOI. Do you want to build a connection between the output that you are registering and another research output, so you can use a related identifier? If you want to include information on the rights and the licensing information, you can do that as well. So why in particular persistent identifiers, and why it will be useful in enhancing trust in the research infrastructure? As you know, from the research life cycle, the persistent identifier metadata appears across every phase of the research life cycle, from the initial planning and design, collecting and creating, to the evaluation and archiving, to the final steps of sharing and disseminating the final output. It could be an open access article, an open research data set, to the final step of publishing and reusability of this output. So persistent identifiers and metadata appear across all of these phases, and persistent identifier metadata can also help us to make this record permanent, and the associated metadata that comes with these bids are usually openly available to the community. And as we will see in the upcoming slides, these bids metadata carries with it the evidence of credibility. So, for example, looking at the data site metadata schema, when you are registering a DOI for an output, you will get the opportunity to address who and how. So you can get the opportunity to identify the contributors who created this work, the authors, and you can use identifiers like ORCID IDs and research organization registry, ROR IDs, to give credit to the author and the affiliated institution or the organization that produced this work. And we support also different roles that contributed to producing this output. So you get also the opportunity to add detailed and visible attribution to enhance the credibility and the equity and the transparency as well about who created this research output. In terms of the who also, like who funded this research, so you get the opportunity to include funding information and give acknowledgement also to funders who funded this research. So this also support transparency and strengthen also research integrity. So you can acknowledge funders who funded your research using the ROR ID, the Research Organization Registry of that funder. And when you include this information in your DOI metadata record, remember that this metadata information that is associated with your DOI record will always remain open, available, and accessible to everyone to retrieve and to reuse. So you are also giving a long-term acknowledgement for the funder who funded this research. And this information, as I mentioned, will always be openly available. The funding data will be available to systems and different services to reuse and access this information. Another important aspect is also getting the opportunity when you are registering a DataCite DOI to address when. So we are able to capture when this research was created, when the research was reviewed, and when that research output was finally published. Using the dates and the different variables in the DataCite metadata schema, we can build a timeline of the different revisions and activities that took this output to be published finally. And as you can relate to this, this will make us understand how this research output was published. So it adds more context to understand how the journey that this research output took to be published. So there are different dates that you can add: when this research was accepted, when it was available, when it was updated, when it was issued or created. So you can add these various dates to your DOI metadata record when you are registering a DataCite DOI. Another important aspect is, as we all know, there is a huge attention currently in the research reporting to journal articles, but I'm sure you agree with me that journal article, for example, is the final output of a long research process. During that research process, researchers will produce a lot of valuable outputs that should be visible, discoverable, and credited as well. So, for example, a research data set or a report or a presentation even that the researcher delivered about his research, so at a conference, all of these outputs should be visible and discoverable. So DataCite metadata schema support registering DOIs for over 30 different types of outputs and the resources, and the research activities as well, like grant or awards can be registered with a DataCite DOI. So as you can see, our metadata schema is diversified. It supports registering DOIs for dissertations or datasets, images, instrument, and we keep adding new resource types based on the community feedback, and we have official channels for members to suggest new resource types based on their needs. And the ultimate goal is we want to ensure that all component of research outputs, not only the journal articles, but the data sets, the software script, the instrument are visible, are traceable as well. So you get the opportunity when you are registering a DOI to acknowledge also all of these various resource types. Another important aspect of the schema is the ability to build the connections between other objects, the ability to build the connections with contributors, the ability to build the connections also with organizations. So, for example, if you want to build a connection with other output, you can use the related identifier and the relation type as well. So for the related identifiers, the DataCite metadata schema has around 38 relation types. So if you are registering, for example, a data set and you want to build a connection between this data set and the journal article, you can say this data set is cited by this journal article, or it's a version of the following output, or it's a part of, or it's published in, or it's referenced by. So as you can see at the right side of the screen, there are various relation types that you can use to build a connection between the object or the output that you are currently registering and other research outputs and the resources. And I'm sure you all agree with me that this is very important aspect to enhance the reproducibility of research outputs, and also it adds more context. So for example, when I see that this data set that I'm accessing right now is related to this journal article, and I can see this information is mentioned as part of the DOI metadata for this data set, I can click on the DOI of the journal article and explore and understand more context about the research data set that I initially accessed. So it helps also adding more context about the research outputs that you are accessing, and it also adds more clarity to the research object that interact with each other in the research ecosystem. Another important aspect is the rights, and we all know that this is like could be a concern as well. Like I want to give credit to my work, or my organization has a specific licensing information. So the data site metadata schema will allow you to define how this research can be used and shared and cited. You can include the licensing information about the output. If you have a specific legal permissions or restrictions, you can include all of these information when you are registering a data site DOI to become part of your metadata record. So for example, if you are publishing an output in the open access format and you are using a Creative Commons attribution license, you can include this, that you're using CC BY license, for example, and it will be part of the metadata record about your output. And as we all know, a clear licensing information enhances also the transparency and trust in the research infrastructure. So yeah, this was just a brief overview, so we can summarize the overall benefits of adopting data site DOIs and the persistent identifiers in general, but the focus of this slide on the digital object identifiers in particular, they really play a key role in improving visibility and discoverability. I will show you this more in the upcoming slide. They also, and we all know when a research output is more visible, more discoverable, you have more opportunities for getting citations. You have more opportunities as well to track the impact of your research. And also adopting data site DOIs increases the recognition because as we saw, you can give credit to researchers who created these outputs. You can give credit to your university, to your institution who published this output, because part of the metadata information that we will ask you for while registering a data site DOI is who created this output and who is the publisher of this output. So you get an opportunity to increase recognition, not only for your researchers, but also for your institution. An opportunity also to connect your research outputs with the global ecosystem. You also get an opportunity, as we saw, to enable trust in the research infrastructure. And most importantly, you get an opportunity to align your with the open science policies, such as the UNESCO 2021 recommendation on open science that clearly mentioned and advocate for the adoption of persistent identifiers to identify research outputs, and you align yourself as well with the FAIR principles. On the topic of more visibility and discoverability, so for example, data site DOIs are indexed by various scholarly platforms that will digest and consume the data site openly available metadata. They will retrieve these metadata, process it, and display it on their indexes and their systems. And what you see here is just couple of examples of these system databases that consume data site openly available metadata record. Very recently, for example, data site metadata is now openly available in OpenAlex. So yeah, I thought it would be good also to briefly mention, if you are listening to us today and you want to explore more about DataCite and our infrastructure and the membership pathways, we have flexible membership options and the pathways for organizations and universities to join us, whether through an institutional membership or consortium membership pathway as well. And I also want to highlight an important change that happened in April 2026 this year, when the DataCite officially introduced a new membership model following the approval that we received from the DataCite Executive Board and also the DataCite members who approved this new membership model during the 2026 General Assembly. And the core principles for this new membership model is to support equity and consider, for example, the geographical location of the organization that is applying to get DataCite membership. And also the new membership models takes and consider a sustainable approach to collective funding to maintain this shared open infrastructure. In the new model as well, fees are calculated and based on the services itself, not on the data. For example, how many DOIs you are registering or charging a fee for each DOI the organization is going to register. The new membership model as well offers a straightforward, transparent, and predictable structure, making it easy for organizations and the members to plan and to know in advance about the cost of their membership. Another key factor of the DataCite and DataCite governance and how we operate as an organization is everything is a community governed pricing. So as I highlighted, all DataCite members and the executive board approved, and we had an open voting that the members collectively approved the new fee model and the associated cost that comes with it. And I want also, because we are talking to the Somalian research community, I want to briefly highlight the current work in progress and discussion with the Somalia REN DataCite initiative. And as Joy highlighted in her presentation and in her talk, that Somalian REN was one of the first countries in the East African region to have their own national level repository, and that national level repository is using DataCite DOIs as well, which is great. So we are working now with the Somalian REN to expand the scope of their service and the adoption of DataCite DOIs beyond that national repository. So for example, within the DataCite and Somalian REN initiative, we are working and exploring setting up a national DataCite consortium in the country, because the consortium model that DataCite offers, it comes with many advantages, like it offers a sustainable and cost-effective pathway for universities and the research organizations that has repositories and they want to embrace DataCite DOIs and adopt DataCite DOIs. So the consortium model offers a cost-effective pathway, and we all know when a solution is sustainable and cost-effective, this could reflect to high adoption rates among the community, enhances also the infrastructure within that community, but not on an institutional level, but on a national level, because the consortium would be open to various universities and organizations to join. And most importantly, by doing that, we are putting open science in action and adopting and aligning the Somalian community with global UNESCO open science recommendations. If you want to know more about this initiative, this is an invitation to join the conversation. Somalia REN is hosting a webinar on 8th of September at 11 a.m. East Eastern African time. And the main objective of this webinar, we want to introduce, of course, the initiative, but most importantly, we really want you to join to share your thoughts. We want to hear your feedback, your perspective on this initiative. What are the challenges that you are currently seeing at your institution? How we can work together to overcome these challenges? How we can work together to improve the visibility of the outputs of your thesis and dissertation and other outputs that your institution, your university is currently publishing. And the session, of course, will provide also an overview of DataCite community and services. And I added also the link here, or you can scan the QR code if you wish to register for the webinar. And yeah, very briefly, I want to mention this at the end. This is my last slide. So joining the DataCite community is not only about getting an identifier or registering a DOI for your outputs. The value really goes beyond that. So you get an opportunity to contribute and to participate in a dynamic community. As I highlighted, everything is a community governed. So you get the opportunity to vote in the General Assembly on various activities like the budget, the fee structure. You get an opportunity also to participate in various community groups that we have. If you are interested in metadata, we have a metadata working group. If you work is more around community engagement and you want to share your perspective on that, we have a community engagement steering groups. We host and participate in various community events. We are hosting a DataCite Connect in the Leiden, co-located with the BitFest, and I believe Somalian NREN and TCC Africa is also participating at the BitFest this year. So it would be an opportunity also to connect with a DataCite team there. We have our roadmap also openly available, and you get an opportunity to share your thoughts and ideas and feedback. So there are various community activities, various benefits of joining the DataCite community beyond getting an identifier and registering a DOI for your output. And yeah, that's it. Please let me know if you have any questions, and thank you so much for the opportunity to contribute to this session today.
Thank you so much, Mustafa, and highlighting the importance of connectivity. It actually brings to fore what he's talked about brings to fore our open infrastructure project, the Africa PID Alliance, where we've produced a persistent identifier called DOCID, and we are working very closely with DataCite on this. And because we recognize that as much as you're looking at connectivity, there's so much traditional persistent identifiers can do, especially in various research areas. So we are truly honored to work with DataCite. They also work with us in co-creating DocID, but not only that, but also it is embedded within our ecosystem. So we are at a stage when you're looking at open science, when you're looking at research accessibility and visibility, it's not about competition. It's about collaboration to make sure that we support our respective communities in making sure that their work is accessible. So yes, Mohammed, looking forward to seeing you in Leiden and also with co-presenting with you on how we are creating persistent identifiers to support the academic communities. So as we are going on with the program, please feel free to share your questions and your comments as we prepare for the next speaker. We are more than happy to answer them as you're going through the session. Now we'll go to Lebanon, and it was actually an honor to meet our colleagues from Lebanon. We met them at the AFRAN conference in Jordan last year, and this is the Arab Council for Social Sciences. Now, interestingly enough, the Arab Council for Social Sciences, based out of Lebanon, has been working with the Somalia government, especially when it comes to research ethics. So it made sense for us to include them, and they've been doing this over the years. So it made sense for us to include them in this conversation so that they can also share with us research ethics and ethics, equity, and regional perspectives, especially when you're looking at research integrity in the Arab and Global South context. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mushira El-Ghaziri. She's the Associate Director of the Arab Council for Social Sciences. Madam Mushira, over to you.
Thank you so much, Joy. Very pleased to meet you all. And thanks to Joy and Nicole for arranging for me to be with you. It's a great honor. I'm very pleased to come right after Mohammed Mustafa, actually, because I just make a quick reference to this, because another branch of the ACSS work is working closely with DataCite, and we have benefited a lot from Mohammed's input and training on the PIDs and open data infrastructure. So it's good to know that there is already some collaboration going on a certain aspect of research integrity and research ethics. But what I will try to do today is take it to a slightly different direction. And I have to give you just a quick heads up that I'm receiving a message saying my connection is unstable, so I may have to disappear momentarily, but I will come back immediately. It seems there is a little glitch. Anyway, I was just going to say that I'm taking it in another direction, very related to what we're talking about in terms of research integrity. I am in charge of the grants and fellowships programs at the ACSS. It's a regional organization that works in the area of enhancement of research in the social sciences in the Arab world. And at any time of the year, we have between 4 and 7 programs functioning. They accomplish different goals and they do different things for different groups of researchers. But one thing they all have in common is that all the grantees and the fellows have to receive training on research ethics in the social sciences with a focus on their own projects. So my first remark that in the area of research integrity and research ethics, this is a very, as we know, broad area, and it's now luckily being tackled by different organizations from different perspectives. And this is great because despite its importance for knowledge production, it has not been receiving enough attention. And our work together is appreciated because we can put together different pieces of this puzzle. So the input of the different organizations into this area depends a lot on the role and the function that each of us thinks we can play in this broad area, and very importantly, our governance structure. So I'll give the example of the ACSS. We are a membership-based organization. I said we are working in the area of the social sciences, capacity building. And for that purpose, we give the grants to individuals and to institutions. And our main concern is to help these people produce knowledge that we can rely on in the future, to build on knowledge that is solid, that is trustworthy, and knowledge that is ethical. So we do underline in general research integrity, and we consider it basic requirement for all the research work that we do. And in all our documents at the ACSS, all our codes of conduct, code of ethics, we make it very clear that we do not tolerate any research misconduct, including fabrication and falsification of data and plagiarism. And we strongly believe that it is our job as a research community to hold each other, fellow researchers, accountable for any misconduct, and we hold them accountable for the integrity of the research. So we are very much interested, and I do repeat that we are part of this conversation with the TCC on broadening the idea of research integrity to pertain it more to the social sciences. But we do have a niche. We do have a very small area in which we are interested and we're trying to work on, and this is what I would like to share with you today. I hope you see why it is relevant. So what we try to do at the ACSS is regulate and streamline the relationship between the researchers and the research participants as the two of them get together, are involved in the research process. And our specific interest pertains to the entire research process. I think it's something that Joy mentioned in the beginning. From the time of conceptualizing the research problem and thinking of the research questions to the time when you are ready to publish and disseminate, and even beyond that. I'll just give very quickly 2 quick examples that often people don't think are related to research ethics, but in our definition, we do consider them important and they're often overlooked. The ethics of team formation. When you form a research team, what are the different responsibilities, especially the responsibilities and duties of junior team members, how you're able to set those parameters and how you're able to acknowledge their work and reward them financially and otherwise. This is very important for us. The other issue, which is also related to that, is the collaborations in general in research, but particularly in this respect, the ethical implications of collaboration between northern and southern based institutions, between individuals and researchers in the north who typically do the theorization and typically for the south to do the fieldwork and the methodological work. We try to go beyond these binaries. We try to make sure that everybody is well represented in all aspects of the research. So these are just 2 quick examples of how we see ethics. A third area, and that's also important, is how we acknowledge of the role of the research participants in the research. The idea of paying back for being partners in the research process, for making sure that their voices are well represented and that we do not misrepresent what they told us throughout the process. Why are we interested in research ethics in the way I just described? Clearly, because unfortunately, our universities in the Arab region do not pay attention to this very important area. Some methodology courses are being offered, but they pay very tangential attention to the question of research ethics. And even those who do pay some attention, they do it from a bureaucratic, legalistic, and institutional protection perspective. And this is often represented in ethical review boards. We can talk about this later if you like. But there are also other reasons why in the Arab region we need to be paying more attention to research ethics. And that has to do with the question of increasing authoritarianism, the proliferation of wars and conflicts, and these are posing new ethical problems to the research process and making it imperative on the researchers to think and rethink what ethical knowledge can come out of the research in situations of wars, in situation of occupation, which is itself an unethical situation. How do we protect our interlocutors? How we make sure that we are not exposing them to danger because of their political or ideological stances? How do we make sure we do not exacerbate their trauma? That's very important too. And as we think of all of these challenges, we are always keeping in the back of our minds, but also in the front of our minds, the historical development of research ethics as an area of study. And as we all know, it's been clearly and for very long associated with biomedical sciences because of the violations that have happened on humans, during medical trials and experimentation. Then came later the realization that social sciences are also implicated because psychological harm can happen during the interview process, and it's no less important or significant than physical harm, and we have to take that into account. And this is something that has continued to persevere until the present time. And at the ACSS in Beirut, we are always looking for conversations with similar-minded individuals and organizations who see the importance of going beyond the biomedical paradigm to expand the interest of the social sciences in this issue. The last reason why we need to be rethinking ethics and thinking ethics all the time is that most of the knowledge that we have about research ethics comes to us from the West, from Western institutions, and are based on Western paradigms that reflect what the West thinks is important knowledge, which knowledge matters, and how knowledge should be produced. And the issue that comes up all the time for us at the ACSS with scholars who are studying for the PhD, for example, in Western institutions and are sent back to the region to do fieldwork is the question of private and public. What is a private space? What is a public space? Where do you have to do your interviews? How the researchers should relate to the research participants, and so on. And all the things that these scholars come back with to the region actually show a lot of little understanding of the local and the cultural context in the Arab region. So it's very important for us to start also going beyond these Western paradigms and realities that influence how we study research ethics. So what do we do at the ACSS? And I'll try to give you a good idea, but very briefly. We try the ACSS to provide a platform, an independent platform that does not disrespect or does not take into account the universally agreed upon principles of respect for individual participants, voluntary participation, consent form, doing good, minimizing harms, and so on. These are all universally accepted and are very important. But what we are really saying, it goes beyond these. It's not a question of checklists and making sure that we're ticking the boxes of having had a consent form or, explaining the questions. That's not all. What it is about for us is a research ethics is intrinsically a reflexive process rather than a performative or legalistic procedure. It's long, it's continuous, and it's critical. And it starts with thinking of the research questions, as I said, and ends with publication and dissemination. It's personal, it's possibly very lonely process because once in the field, the researcher is completely on their own to constantly ask themselves difficult questions as what kind of knowledge matters, what am I producing, the different power relations guiding the research process, and are we doing this research to advance our own career or we're doing it for a larger good? And these are important questions that the researcher is required to ask him or herself all the time for the entire process. And being reflexive, I have to emphasize, does not mean that one can predict an ethical problem or come up with a solution. It's really being able and capable of reflecting and analyzing a situation as it comes up, and often they come up unexpectedly. So the four sort of characteristics of what we do, our approach, is that ethics is an ongoing process, as I just said. It should be assessed and considered at each juncture of the research project. Multiple judgments are possible, ambiguities and uncertainties are part of the process, and integrating reflexivity in every step is very important. The second point is that it's situated and contextual in the sense that ethical considerations vary between national and local contexts, and one needs to adapt to new methodological approaches and to technological advances based on the situation. The third is that it's very important for the researcher to make sure that under any situation, any condition, you need to protect the research participants, and you should protect their rights and welfare. You need to protect fellow researchers, and you need to protect yourself as a researcher. Protection is of utmost importance in this case. And then research ethics is case-based, so it's not prescriptive. Rather than prescribe a set of approved practices, we advocate for an approach that attends to specific needs of each case. Conundrums are extremely complex, and often there isn't one clear solution to the dilemma. It's never black and white, and the gray zones are always there. And it's very important for the researcher to manage all these issues. I do have all these ideas we have posted on our website in a document that we call Guidelines to Research Ethics. So as you see, even from the term guidelines, it's not an imposition. It's an invitation for everyone to look into this document and think about reflexivity and treat research ethics as a process that requires a lot of thinking and a lot of reflections, rather than just simply making sure the list is complete or all the boxes are ticked. So it is on our website. I do have a few things to say about the challenges we are facing with technological advances, but I think maybe I'm not going to be adding a lot more to what my colleagues have said. But I just want to say that we are always running into the new challenges that technology is posing to us. And it's really not about AI now, because we've had issues before with when we had the COVID problem, and people had to start thinking about, other ways of doing research and doing the interviews online or doing the interviews on the phone. And we started to ask ourselves at the ACSS, what does that even mean for the field? What is the field and the situation? Is it the phone? Is it the internet? How do we make sure, without seeing the other person on the other line, on the other side, that we are not causing any trauma for them? How are they receiving our questions? So we've had these issues from before, and we have to deal with them constantly. All the internet-based research that is now happening, and we receive a lot of proposals about issues that are being discussed on the internet. And we are asking ourselves again the question about private and public. What is a public space? What is a private space? When we get a consent form, whom do we get it from? Do we get it from the person who owns the website or from the subscribers? How do we know that we are not inflicting harm on someone who is a member of the group that we cannot see? I mean, we're running into all these problems all the time. And with AI, it's getting much worse, I have to say. Just now at the ACSS, we have to face the problem of all the AI-generated proposals. And to be honest, I'll benefit a lot from all your perspectives on how to deal with that, because I don't think we have a good solution to all the AI-generated produced work. But I know that it can get worse. We haven't reached that point yet. But that, the AI can help you do the interviews. They can do the interviews for you completely with real people or with fictional people. So I haven't reached that level yet, and I have not decided how to deal with it. But once we get to that bridge, we will have to discuss it. But I mean, the challenges are constantly coming up, and we have to find ways to deal with them. I will end here so we have a chance for conversations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mushira. And your presentation really goes aligned with what Dr. Yage was talking about. Dr. Yage being the founding director of the CMAD AI Institute, about protecting research integrity in the age of AI. He was also highlighting, as much as AI brings quite a bit of opportunities, there are risks, and there are risks that are coming with it, but then we need to be responsible on how we effectively use it, and we need to have proper representation. I guess it's something that we cannot ignore, bearing in mind that it is part of the research life cycle. AI is now being included, is supporting elements of the research life cycle, but it is important to acknowledge that it does come with a bit of challenges, and we need to figure out how we can manage it effectively and use it responsibly. And actually that leads to our next speaker, and she's coming from our partner, that is PLOS. And this is Maria Zal, and she's still on ethics. She'll be talking about publication ethics, peer review, and responsible scholarly publishing. She's the team manager on publication ethics at PLOS. And with this, she's also going to share with us some of the things that we need to be aware of in the scholarly publishing life cycle, but also I believe she'll also be touching on some elements of AI, because this is now becoming part of the life cycle as well when it comes to publishing. So over to you, Maria.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting PLOS to speak here today. My name is Maria Zalm, and I'm a senior editor and team manager with the PLOS publication ethics team. And today I'll be talking about research integrity in scholarly publishing in the era of AI. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with PLOS, we are a non-profit open access publisher on a mission to drive meaningful change in research publishing policy and practice. PLOS breaks boundaries by reimagining publishing models, by removing barriers to open science principles, and by embracing diverse perspectives that help make research questions relevant and results trustworthy to diverse communities and society as a whole. So one of PLOS's goals is to advance research faster by sharing research more broadly, and by encouraging collaborations through improving people's access to current research. And we aim to do so through inclusivity and increased transparency in data sharing, so that research communities have access to the data required to carry out their own assessments as needed, to further contribute to the foundation of knowledge from which we can all advance. We actively strive for openness and transparency throughout the whole research communication process, because of the benefits that brings to knowledge dissemination, to the utility and reproducibility, and therefore we are open. We are purposefully open by design. So it's importantly and fundamentally, open science is not a standalone part of the scientific or research enterprise. It can and it should be intrinsic to the whole research life cycle. From ideation and planning of designing research, to conducting research and generating knowledge, to validating and analyzing and interpreting that knowledge through the dissemination and reporting and sharing of science. Open science underpins the whole research and enterprise and process. And from PLOS's perspective, open science is more than just about having access to an article. It's about providing the right context to understand it, the resources to replicate it, as well as the tools to collaborate and make science better for everyone. PLOS promotes open science by encouraging that the research community moves away from seeing publishing as an event that only happens when an article appears, to publishing becoming a process that better mirrors how research as a whole is carried out and then disseminated and communicated by researchers. So from PLOS's perspective, scientific publishing should be a process that results in a linked digital stack of material rather than just a solitary article. And such a digital stack might involve different items. So for example, it could be a registered report, which is a publication that outlines the planned research before the research is actually carried out. A preprint, or perhaps multiple versions of preprints that share early versions of the work. A peer-reviewed article, obviously, with its associated peer review materials, but also the data and the associated methods and protocol and code and any other materials that were used to generate these data. And then, importantly, any iterations to correct errors or that improve and add to the results as work is built upon or improved. And especially this last part, that aims at correcting errors and improving interpretation of articles, is particularly close to my personal field of interest. So at PLOS, integrity is at the heart of everything we do. Over the years, we have implemented industry-wide leading ethics policies, including policies for research involving human participants and an inclusivity on global research policies. Some submissions that have been sent to PLOS are subject to numerous editorial checks at multiple points during, before, and after the peer review process. And PLOS is a dedicated publication ethics team with editors who are experienced in investigating and following up on publication ethics and research integrity concerns, both before and after an article is published, and who are involved in multiple cross-industry working groups and initiatives such as United to Act, NISO-COREC, PICNIC, several STM and COPE initiatives, all aimed at improving and restoring the integrity of the scholarly record. So for the remainder of this presentation, I will be talking more broadly about concepts of publication ethics and research integrity specifically. The range of challenges that the scholarly publishing industry currently faces is vast, and I could speak for hours about every single challenge that we face. But with an eye of time, for the remainder of this talk, I will focus on providing some insights in publication ethics at an editorial level, as well as research integrity in the era of AI specifically, and some items that institutes and policymakers can focus on to help us tackle these challenges and to uphold the integrity of the scholarly record. So to start, I want to clarify that there is a mismatch in the aims of research integrity investigations carried out by institutions and publication ethics investigations carried out by publishers. And the latter is often misunderstood by people outside of the publishing industry. So whereas institutional investigations often focus on finding evidence of fraud or misconduct, where an investigation into the origin of the error and the culpability of the individuals involved in the study is central to the inquiry, investigations by editors or sometimes publishers focus on assessing the reliability of the published results instead and the article's adherence to the journal's policies, completely irrespective of the individual author's culpability or intent. So a journal may retract an article if the editors find that the findings are unreliable or if the article does not meet the journal's editorial policies or requirements, regardless of whether the issues with the article were the result of honest error or misunderstanding or actual misconduct. And in many cases, a journal does not require institutional input or approval to pursue a retraction. So at PLOS, we group publication ethics concerns into three major pillars, specifically scientific issues that affect individual articles or maybe a number of articles of researchers from the same research group, issues pertaining to journal policy adherence, and finally, systematic manipulation of the publication process. The first pillar involves primarily concerns pertaining to, say, image or data manipulation and fabrication, statistical analysis concerns, methodological concerns. Then the pillar about adherence to journal policy may involve concerns regarding animal and human ethics policies, or plagiarism and copyright concerns, or dual submission and dual publication, and even disputes about data ownership and authorship. And then concerns pertaining to the systematic manipulation involve concerns and investigations into paper mills, authorship for sale, peer review rings, and citation cartels. And some of these investigations can involve dozens or hundreds of submissions and published articles at the same time. So editorial staff in a publishing house carries out a wide range of checks to ensure the reliability of integrity of the work that is published by the journals and to ensure that the articles adhere to the journal's editorial policies. As part of these checks, we try and intercept manuscripts that are linked to attempt to manipulate the publication process, including peer review, paper mill activity, or authorship for sale, citation stacking, etc. But during these editorial checks, editors will try and identify concerning trends, which may directly result into the development of new or changes to existing editorial policies and submission requirements. But unfortunately, concerns cannot always be identified prior to publication, and sometimes articles just, concerns slip through the net. In these cases, editorial teams or publishers will respond by investigating concerns raised and by implementing corrective action if needed, such as corrections, expressions of concern, or retractions. And policy development sort of sits in between this preventative and responsive work. Editorial policies are both developed in response to changing research practices, for example, with the rapid development of generative AI, but also to prevent concerns with published articles and in response to concerning practices that we've observed either during pre-publication screening or during post-publication editorial follow-up. Journals have a responsibility to ensure that these policies can be easily discovered by prospective authors and that authors are aware that these exist, and ideally authors should be agreeing to these policies at the time that they submit their article to a journal. So currently, a hot topic of debate in the field of research integrity is, without a surprise, is AI. And there is no denying that the AI, specifically the generative AI tools that have been developed over recent years, pose new threats to research integrity through image and data fabrication, through hallucinated statements and references, bias amplification, and basically restrictions to its ability to correctly interpret or even acknowledge post-publication editorial material without needing a full retraining of the dataset. However, AI is here to stay, and when used in a responsible manner, it can be a very useful and powerful tool to help accelerate science. So when we're talking about research integrity in the era of AI, we should not be focusing on how we can prevent AI to influence science altogether, but instead we should focus on setting clear expectations and standards and best practices regarding the acceptable and ethical use of AI, both during the research process and the publishing process, to ensure the integrity of this scholarly record is maintained. And so to ensure integrity in the area of AI, it is of the utmost importance that governments, institutions, and publishers set clear guidelines of what constitutes as ethical or acceptable uses of AI and what is unacceptable or even outright prohibited. When considering uses of AI, especially generative AI for scientific publication, there are some uses that are generally accepted versus uses that are unaccepted and may even lead to retraction of an article. So, for example, when it is generally acceptable to use generative AI in a way that assists the writing process of researchers or that helps the conceptualization process, but it is not usually considered acceptable for AI to replace the researcher in the conceptualization or the research or the writing process altogether. And it may be acceptable for researchers to use generative AI to help them, say, translate a manuscript that they have written in their native tongue to a language of the journal of interest, especially historically. Writing in an English journal when you're not a native English speaker can often lead to biases and makes it more difficult to get an article published. So AI can really help in the translation of that, but it does remain the author's responsibility to ensure that they check the translation, that everything is accurate and correct, and that no hallucinated information has been included, especially in the reference list. And when using AI in their studies, researchers should be aware that they may be at risk of non-compliance with international data protection laws, as well as intellectual property and copyright laws. And it is the researcher's responsibility to be aware of these risks and use any tool in a responsible manner. For example, just because a dataset is publicly available online does not mean that the dataset's owners have given consent for these data to be used in secondary studies using AI tools. And especially when this dataset includes medical information or other forms of human subject data, it is incredibly important to ensure that prospective ethics approval for the use of AI on this dataset has been sought before these datasets have been analyzed with AI tools, because otherwise it's unethical research and it will become unpublishable or may be retracted if it does get published. Because ultimately, the researchers are responsible that all research that is carried out using AI tools is conducted in an ethical manner, and the authors retain final responsibility to ensure the reliability, the validity, and the integrity of all AI-generated aspects of their paper. And so, although many of the issues with submitted and published articles do come as a result of honest error or misunderstanding of the policies, we also see many different forms of misconduct, and they often have one thing in common. The offending researchers are driven by the current perish or publish culture in academia. Specifically, the pressure to publish in order to graduate or to be considered for promotion or tenure or to receive big financial bonuses. And these incentives may drive many of the publication ethics concerns that cannot be addressed by journals alone and require an industry-wide approach, especially at an institutional and a funders level. Because if a researcher has to choose between not publishing and then therefore their contract not being continued, or falsifying the data and only losing their job if they get caught, then the barrier to participate in misconduct and unethical research becomes much smaller. And therefore, as publishers, we call on institutions and funders across the world to reconsider the ways in which staff and student performance is assessed, by using measures that put quality and integrity of their work over the quantity of their publications and output. Editors are working really hard to ensure and to restore the integrity and the reliability of the scholarly record, but ultimately, publishers are the last line of defense when it comes to upholding the scholarly record. And so with that, my take-home message for today is that clear guidance goes a long way. So please educate your students and staff. Make sure that they're aware of acceptable and ethical use, unacceptable and prohibited uses of especially AI, but also other research integrity practices, and that they're aware of the potential consequences, and assess their performance and based on the quality and the integrity of their work rather than the quantity of their output. Please ensure that there are clear laws, regulations, and best practice documents in place pertaining to research integrity, both at a national and institutional level and not just at the publisher level. Because by the time an article is written, it is too late to go back and change unethical research into ethical research. And this is especially important regarding the ethical use of AI in research. And please communicate and collaborate with editors in a timely manner when concerns are raised, because many of us are very happy to help and to ensure the reliability of the published record. So with that, I'd like to thank you for listening. If you have any publication ethics related questions pertaining to PLOS content specifically, then you can email me at m.salm@plos.org or my company at pubethics@plos.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maria, and thanks for taking us through what PLOS is doing, especially when it comes to considering also the use of AI within the publishing life cycle, what we need to be aware of, what early career researchers need to be aware of as well before, or even researchers need to be aware of before publishing as well. So our next speaker is Mohamud Mohamed Siad, the president of the Somali Library Association, and also the Director General of the National Library of Somalia. He's going to be talking about the role of libraries in promoting research integrity and open science. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Joy, and let me greet the distinguished guests, researchers, librarians. Ladies and gentlemen, salam to you all. It's a great honor to speak this meeting, which has been along the way for a long time. I thank you all the partners, especially TCC Africa and other partners such as PLOS and other invited guests, participants all. Thank you all for at this time, and I really appreciate for your participation. And for today, I think a lot have been said, and audiences have listened a lot. I hope they still have interest for the remaining of the my presentation, since I am late for some time. I apologize for that. I think I can be heard. Do you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we can.
Very clearly.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And for me to come to the research integrity and open science, let me briefly touch the library and mention that a library is more than just books, and it collects, organizes, preserves, and provides access to knowledge, includes books, journals, research, digital resources, and local knowledge, both print and digital form. In a simple way, a library connects people with the information they need. And I think, you know, a lot have been said about the research integrity, but now I'm going to connect the library role with what has been said. Next. And why libraries are important, I think everyone knows. but it's just for us to say it again. Support education and lifelong learning. We as long as we finish our studies, it's not yet done. We need to continue studying, and the best place to study is is the library services. Help people find reliable information, not like the internet. Support research and innovation. Preserve culture, language, local knowledge, of course, and national memory. Libraries also are important in providing access to knowledge for different groups in society, as their needs are different, because communities have different needs. Next, please. For example, a student needs learning materials. A researcher might need reliable sources. A teacher needs updated knowledge. A policymaker needs evidence, and community needs useful information. So the library helps connect all those people with the right information they need. Continue. Then from access to responsible use, I think access to information alone isn't enough. We must also ask, is the information reliable? Who created it? Is it based on evidence? Is it also being used honestly and responsible? I think a lot has been said by Maria in the last presentation. Avoid plagiarism. Using proper citation and referencing, presenting research findings honestly, managing research data responsibly. I think it is this way where research integrity comes. So research integrity means then conducting and communicating research in an honest, responsible, and ethical way. Example, giving credit to original authors, using proper citation and referencing, avoiding plagiarism, presenting research findings honestly, managing research data responsibly. Continue. So then, it is this way that libraries and librarians help researchers find reliable and credible sources, evaluate information, cite reference correctly, avoid plagiarism, understand copyright and ethical use of information, manage and preserve research data. So, just an example, a librarian can guide a student on how to use and cite a source correctly. Right? So then, from research integrity and open science, I think a lot have been said also. Open science is based on a simple idea. Knowledge should be shared widely and possible so that more people can access, examine, and benefit from it. It promotes greater access, transparency, and collaboration, and much. We need an open science practices in our daily, operations, because as we know, open science could not come without a policies, and I think here it comes to the intervention for national level. Next. Throughout library support, open science, this is their contribution, support open access to research. So, and how we support open access to research is to establish institutional repositories, as last time, Ahmed has said that repositories are very important. Preserve theses, articles, and research outputs, meaning output of all our university research are needed in, to be, reposited in institutional repositories. Help research share their work responsibly, improve the visibility and impact local research. Example, a university repository can make a thesis available to other researchers. So it is an open for everyone, and it is not a bay wall, constraints. Continue. Next. So why open science matters, as a lot of speakers already mentioned, many students and researchers cannot avoid the expensive journals and databases. You know, this is quite a fact that many countries, including sub-Saharan, especially in our in our country, we cannot avoid open resources individually. We need to collaborate with other consortia so that we can buy open, e-resources. So that's why openness is very important, to be accepted. So open access can reduce barriers to knowledge, support researchers and students equally, increase collaboration, make local research more visible, help knowledge contribute to society and development. So research integrity plus open science together may, research integrity and open science, how they interact. Research integrity means creating trustworthy knowledge. Open science is sharing knowledge more widely. So then libraries help bring the two together. They support researchers from finding information to preserving and sharing research. Next. So this is the way throughout the library services, we provide our users to find the right information. We also assist evaluating sources, using information ethically, conducting and managing research, preserving research, and also, of course, sharing knowledge openly. And I think through this, we cannot do that unless we focus on, repositories, so that the openness will be encouraged. And the general rule is also that the modern library is not simply a place where books are stored. It is a partner where we partner with all that involved in research community and research collaborationists. Learning, research, discovery, innovation, preservation, and responsible knowledge sharing. We all contribute all these. So libraries are very important in responding to research integrity and open science through open science infrastructures, including repositories in every research or library institutions. Next. The key message I want to give to the audience of today, that the libraries are not only custodians of knowledge these days. They help create trustworthy knowledge and ensure that knowledge can reach and benefit more people. So that means strengthening libraries means strengthening research integrity, open science, and wider knowledge society. So libraries, collaborate with open science initiatives and also work for research integrity by teaching researchers and students to write responsibly and take the responsibility of being, out of plagiarism while using, or writing about a research paper. And much more than today is the AI, which is also coming with its own challenges too. I think my presentation was too brief, just to open the discussion of today about the research integrity and open science. And that's all for today. Thank you for your listening. I hope you benefit all the presenters that has presented today. Thank you very much. Over to you, Joy.
Thank you so much, Mohammed, and we are glad that you're able to tackle the challenges that you are facing as we were speaking. Now we are winding up with our final speaker, and then we are going to, as the final speaker is making a presentation, it's a recording from ORCID. We are going to put a Google Doc with a question for you, in which we want to know what are the top 3 actions Somalia should prioritize to strengthen its research integrity. So simultaneously filling the Google Doc as we are listening to the final presentation, and that will be a presentation from Ms. Lombe Tembo. She's the grant program officer and engagement lead at ORCID, and she'll be talking about the role of ORCID in promoting integrity and visibility.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lombe Tembo from ORCID, and I'm based in Zambia. I'm the Senior Grant Program Officer and Engagement Lead, and it's such a pleasure to be here with all of you as part of the Somalia Research Integrity Workshop, and I really wish I was able to join live. So I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to share a little bit about ORCID, as well as our work around research integrity. So what exactly is ORCID? So the letters ORCID stand for Open Researcher and Contributor ID and provides three main services. The first one is the ORCID ID, which is a unique persistent identifier, which is free of charge to individual researchers. Secondly, we have the ORCID record, which is a digital CV or profile that is connected to the ORCID ID. And it can include different metadata such as employment, education, funding, research outputs, and other types of metadata. And then third, we have the ORCID APIs, which are tools that let systems connect and exchange trusted information. So I'd like for you to think of ORCID as a central place for research information that is shared across research systems. So I love this diagram because it changes how we think about ORCID. I think of it more as a transport hub. So just imagine an airport. So flights are arriving from all over the world, passengers are changing planes and then continuing to their next destination. So ORCID works in pretty much the same way. So universities contribute affiliation information, publishers contribute publications, funders contribute grant information, repositories contribute research outputs, and then the magic happens. All of that trusted information comes together in one place and can then flow with the researcher's permission to other systems that they use. So that means that the researcher doesn't have to keep on proving who they are every single time that to interact with another platform. And what this does is that it saves time for everyone. So we've talked about what ORCID is, but an equally important question is this. How widely is it actually being used? Because infrastructure only becomes valuable when the community adopts it. And this slide isn't about memorizing numbers, but I would like you to just notice the scale. Today, there are more than 11 million active researchers with ORCID IDs and thousands of universities, publishers, funders, and repositories that are connected to the ORCID registry. Also, we have over 7,000 scholarly systems that integrate with ORCID in one way or the other. So what this tells us is that ORCID is no longer simply a researcher profile. It has become shared infrastructure that allows information to move reliably between different systems. And so now that we've established what ORCID is, I'd like to talk a little bit about why any of this matters, especially here in Africa. So I'd ask you to reflect on one question as we go through this session. If incredible research is produced, but the global research ecosystem struggles to discover it, does it receive the impact that it deserves? We know that Africa is home to almost 1/5 of the world's population, but only contributes a small fraction of global scholarly output. Part of that is about research capacity, but another very important part is the visibility. Too much valuable African research remains disconnected across institutional repositories, publisher platforms, funding systems, and researcher profiles. And so today's conversation is really about how we handle that. And so how do we close this visibility gap? The answer isn't just one piece of software. It's not one repository. It isn't even ORCID by itself. It's about creating connections between systems so that research can then move seamlessly across the scholarly ecosystem. So persistent identifiers make those connections possible. persistent identifiers such as ORCID and DOIs and so on. So we'll talk a little bit about ORCID's distributed trust model, which fosters a community-driven solution to research integrity. We believe that validation is part of the solution, but what is actually helpful and appropriate for our use case? ORCID isn't trying to replace a passport or a national identity card. In research, we're usually not interested in someone's physical identity, but what we really need is confidence in their scholarly identity. Can a university confirm where they work? Can a publisher confirm that they're the ones who wrote a specific article? Can a funder confirm that they received this grant? So those scholarly connections are much more valuable to research than someone's home address or their passport number and so on. And so this slide compares those two ideas. Traditional identity documents are designed for legal purposes, while on the other hand, ORCID is designed for scholarly communication. So our goal isn't to identify citizens, but it is to identify researchers and then connect them confidently with their research contributions. Researchers can add a wide range of information to their ORCID records themselves, and that's already very valuable. But ORCID becomes even more powerful when trusted organizations contribute that same information because it adds another layer of confidence. I can give an example. So if I came today and I said, my name is Lombe and I went to the University of Zambia. Some of you might believe me, not everyone will, but if the University of Zambia itself came to say that Lombe Tembo studied at the University of Zambia, then that's another layer of confidence for you to believe that I actually did go to this particular university. So that's just a quick example. So what ORCID member organizations do is that they add this validated information. And as you can see here, these trusted organizations then add, they provide trust markers that can be used to help in decision making. And this is really the heart of ORCID's trust model. Researchers don't have to carry that whole responsibility themselves. And as the example that I gave, when you see that green tick, it shows the source of where this information is coming from. And so every organization that is contributing information is contributing the information that they know best. Like the university will validate the affiliations, the publishers will validate publications, funders will validate grants. And so all of these contributions together create a much richer and more trustworthy scholarly record for individuals. Also, ORCID makes these trust markers easy to see through these record summaries, and that's what the record summaries look like. So rather than searching through an entire record, you can just quickly identify which information has been contributed by trusted organizations. So one of the reasons that trust matters so much today is because the scholarly community is facing increasing concerns around research integrity, and ORCID isn't the complete solution. But authenticated identifiers and trusted organizational data make it much harder for inaccurate or fabricated information to spread through research systems. And that is exactly why ORCID works with publishers, with institutions, as well as with funders to increase the amount of validated information that is available. And so I'm sharing this as a handout just so that people can have a better idea. But basically, when institutions integrate their systems with ORCID, they're then more easily able to stay up to date with the research that comes from the scholars, while also making their lives easier. So it's a two-way thing. So it means better attribution, it means better visibility, better reporting, less manual administration. Also, you have more confidence in your institutional data because you know exactly what is coming from your institution. So when researchers then spend less time entering information over and over again, they can spend more time doing actual research, which is obviously more beneficial. And so that's a benefit for researchers, but it's also a benefit for the institutions. Now, speaking about researchers, I'll talk a little bit about the benefits of ORCID to individual researchers. So for starters, ORCID solves name ambiguity, and this is an example of an actual tweet that we had. It's someone was saying, you know, I'm the 38th author, and the response was that, oh wow, that sucks. But he said, I'm the 38th author called Wang. And this wasn't an exaggeration because this is an actual screenshot of what that paper looked like. So what ORCID does is that it tells you exactly which Wang contributed to this paper, as opposed to your, you know, your individual contribution being lost in this sea of names. And also you'd be asking, what's in a name? Most names are not unique. Many people have the same or similar name, and names can change through circumstances such as marriage or, you know, something else. And also there's so many different alphabets. People use different versions of their names throughout their careers. And in some cases, there are different alphabets, abbreviations, or even naming conventions. But if all your work is linked to your ORCID ID, none of your work goes missing, regardless of what that looks like. And so this is an example of how ORCID solves name variation. And you know, this person's name was spelled differently for all the different articles that they did. But because they have an ORCID ID, all of these different articles were linked here because there's a section there that says known as. So all the different papers that had the different combinations of their names, or they were written differently, it doesn't matter because all of those papers still got linked to their ORCID ID. And what this does is that it makes sure that you don't lose any of your work just because your name was written differently on one of your articles or one of your papers. Also, ORCID facilitates automation and reuse with other PIDs. So it doesn't mean that it's not ORCID or another PID, it's ORCID and another PID. So ORCID works alongside other different PIDs, such as PIDs for places, persistent identifiers for things and for people. And all of these are, they all come together in this one ORCID record. And something else that's really important is the fact that researchers are in full control of their ORCID profile, of their ORCID records, sorry. So researchers can set the visibility for every single line item in their ORCID profile from 3 options that are shown on the right. As you can see, green is public, which means openly available for everyone to see, while yellow, or trusted parties, means that any organization that the researcher has allowed, has given permission to, can see and read their data, but it's not publicly available. And then lastly, we have red, which is only me, which means that this line item is only visible to the researcher and no one else, unless they choose to change that. And this slide is really just a summary of it's just a summary of all these different benefits that are available to researchers. And there's an option to download the handout there. There's a link in the presentation, so you'll be able to do that. And with that, thank you so much for your attention. And please do use my email address that is on the first page of this presentation if you have any questions. And I do hope that you have a very fruitful rest of the workshop, and I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lombe. Again, remember when we were talking about research integrity and persistent identifiers, we are also within our open infrastructure program where we've produced the doc ID, which is the persistent identifier, which is actually supporting social sciences. We are working also with ORCID. As I said earlier on, when you're talking about research integrity in scholarly communication, particularly when you're looking at infrastructure, this is not an ecosystem where you compete with other infrastructural ecosystems. It's It's an issue of how you can work together to support the academic community. I've really enjoyed today's webinar, and I've seen you've started filling in the document that we had shared with you. And the question was, what are the top 3 actions Somalia should prioritize to strengthen research integrity? Please fill in the document that we put in the chat. And please fill in the document that we put in the chat. Also note, we are also going to share the recording of the session. And another thing that has been requested is if there's a community where we can have further conversations. TCC Africa has a community of over, right now we're looking at about 2,000 researchers from 3 continents. I've shared the link for you to join. And that's where we normally have more conversations on this and access to more workshops and webinars on similar to the activities that similar to the activities that we've just shared with you today. So again, I've also put that in the chat. You can join the group, but in the meantime, please fill in the document. Maria, there was a question for you. It was about collaboration. And I think this is also something that can be shared by Mushira as well. So if you could answer that question, Maria and Mushira, and then Noor Abdi Rahim, please put your question in the chat, then we'll be able to answer it. And then that will be the last question. Oh, Sarah, please also put your question in the chat as well. So Maria, and then Mushira, you can answer that first question.
Can you read the question, Joy? I'm sorry, I don't have access.
Okay, I'll read it. The question was, how can Somali researchers collaborate with researchers from the global and international community? You can talk from your perspective, and then also Maria can talk from her perspective as well. Yeah.
Maria, are you starting or shall I?
Feel free to start. I'll have a think about my answer.
Okay, I have an immediate answer, of course, is that the first level of collaboration can very happily happen on the platforms of the Arab Council for the social sciences, which is open to all the Arab countries, all the member states of the Arab League. Unfortunately, we do not, for some reason, receive enough applications for any of our grants from Somalia. Of course, it can be a problem with us in how we disseminate our calls, but maybe also some reluctance on the part of our Somali colleagues. I don't know. But everything is just put on the Facebook pages and all our social media for the Arab Council. So I encourage you first to do that. You can collaborate with other organizations and other researchers, but also individuals can apply and institutions on their own can apply. So I would start with that, and then there are lots of openings, again, through the Arab Council.
Okay, Maria?
Yeah, so I'll start to say that I'm personally not directly involved with a lot of these communications and collaborations. So I might be able to put people in contact with the people at my company that are more involved in that, if that's something you're interested in. So let me know. But in general, one of the things that I personally do find, especially with people in the global south, is that it can be very difficult for Western researchers to find your profile and to find your information. We find in a lot of Western institutions, people are very good at promoting their research, promoting their own profile, and for the institutions to push that. So it is easy to find researchers, and it's easy then to communicate with them and start collaborations. But if you cannot be found online, then it's very difficult for people to start those collaborations. So in a certain level, I definitely recommend that people do a certain level of self-promotion, and whether that is via a platform such as LinkedIn, or whether that is through having your own blogs or web pages where you disseminate your own research, where you talk about it publicly so people can see it and can find you and can figure out how to contact you, that will also really help in creating these collaborations. Because if we can't find you, then people will not start those collaborations either. So that is definitely something where people themselves can start.
Okay. There was a question from Abdi Rahim. Could you put it in the chat? He had a question or a comment. And then there's also another question from Sarah. Sarah Ahmed, please put your question in the chat. Good. Here's the next one. Or if it is not easy, if Abdul Rahim, you can ask your question if it is taking long, and then Sarah, and that will be the final. Those are the final questions from today's workshop. Abdul Rahim?
Yes, thank you so much. Greetings to all the panelists and distinguished guests. It's truly inspiring to see TCC Africa collaborating with our local institutions for this wonderful event. Warm greetings to everyone, and I'm especially happy to see some familiar faces here. I also want to express a special appreciation to Somali Rain, their dedicated visionary work in building the foundation for Somali research. My question to the panel is, how can we best balance encouraging AI literacy among early career Somali researchers while establishing strong local infrastructure to enforce academic integrity? That's my question, John.
So that could go to Somaliland, Dr. Yaya, or engineer. Engineer, that would go to you. There's a question to you from Somaliland.
He stepped out. He had an urgent engagement. Yeah, he had to step out. Yes.
All right then. Okay, so that one we'll try and respond to that asynchronously when we are sharing the recordings. Sarah, do you still have your question?
Hi, Joy.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you so much for organizing this workshop. It's been very interesting and very, very useful, incredibly useful to Somali students. My name is Zahra Ahmed Koshin. I am a final year PhD candidate at the University of Nairobi and the University of Denmark, Copenhagen in Denmark, and the Danida funded scholarship project. I'm also the one of the founders of the Somali Gender Hub, a women-led research and advocacy organization that supports Somali women through research training, mentorship, and academic, publishing. Thank you so much to all the speakers. It's been really very, very useful, and I'm happy you're recording this workshop so that maybe we can share with our members. We have a community of practice of more than 300 Somali women who have taken part in our events in the last 9 years of our existence. I wanted to highlight one important opportunity. I think it's important. I was going through the concept note of this workshop and the expected outcomes. And what I'm going to say may sound cliche, and it's not meant to undermine any of the good inputs of all our speakers, Somali and non-Somali, male and female. I think this workshop focused on research integrity in Somalia. And integrity is not only about plagiarism, fabrication and citation. I think it's also about whose knowledge is recognized and whose voice is included. I think it's one thing to have data, and it's another thing to have voice. I think inclusion is also an important part of research integrity, and in particular, I'm talking about gender inclusion as part of research integrity. This workshop has no Somali women speakers from Somalia represented. I think this in itself is a research integrity concern because research can be considered ethical, credible, and inclusive when women are frequently studied but remain underrepresented in spaces like this one, where research priorities, standards, global and national, are being shaped. So it would have been interesting to know what research integrity challenges Somali women researchers and research or scholars face how Somali women can shape national standards on solutions. I hope in the future that you will consider bringing in Somali women's expertise and experiences into panels like this one, because really Somali women are taking part in knowledge production in and on Somalia as researchers, as librarians, as committees, editorial members, and so forth. So once again, thank you so much for this very important workshop. But I think also representation matters. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah. As I said, this has been a conversation we've had with the Somali academic community for the last, 2 years, exactly 2 years. And it is baby steps, and we were able to bring in all the higher education stakeholders. So we will be expounding these conversations with various focus groups as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for this amazing workshop. And also for the higher education stakeholders from Somalia. Thanks for your patience. We've had this conversation for over 2 years as we put this together. All the speakers from the Middle East, from Sub-Saharan Africa and the United Kingdom, thanks for your time and our partners in putting this together. And we look forward to working closely with you in the future. Goodbye for now.